Can you believe that I just did a whole section without pressing record? Because I did. Hello, good morning or good evening. Whenever you are watching this, I hope you are doing well. I am coming back at you with some more quarantine reads. I am still without a job, still stuck at home, so I've been reading. I know that for some people, jobs are starting to open back up and people are starting to make their way back into society. However, there are still lots of us who are still at home following those stay-at-home orders, and I, for one, have been trying to use that time to read. Today, I am coming back at you with 4 more books that I have been reading here in quarantine. I have made 3 other videos like this, so please feel free to check those out. And if you yourself have been using this time to catch up on your TBR list, please let me know what books you've been reading, because I'm always looking for more book suggestions. Like I've said in my previous videos, all of these opinions are my own. I don't expect anyone else to have the same exact feelings and views as me on certain books, but I love to share my thoughts and ideas on different things that I've been reading, and maybe you'll find some books that you yourself haven't heard of or maybe interested in. I've been reading lots of books, some really great, some not so great. Let's get into it. The first book that I'm going to be talking about is Jack of Hearts and Other Parts by L.C. Rosen. This is a young adult contemporary that takes place in a New York private high school. Jack has a bit of a reputation around his school for having an unapologetically queer sex life. He is known for his partying, and he is known for sleeping around. Of course, not all the rumors are true, but nothing makes for better gossip in the Monday morning girls' bathroom than Jack's life. Due to his reputation and his knowledge about sex, gender identity, and sexuality, his best friend asked him to write a sex advice column for her blog. After starting this blog, Jack starts to receive anonymous notes in his locker. They start off really sweet, just saying, "Hey, I think you're cute," and soon become a lot more sinister. Him and his friends have to work together to try and figure out who this anonymous person is and why they're targeting Jack. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did, and I absolutely fell in love with it. While the story itself is a mystery, there's a lot more to it. The mystery drives the plot, but it also reveals a lot about the people in Jack's life. He faces a lot of homophobia, and he also faces a lot of microaggressions from people he didn't really expect it from. A lot of people have opinions about how Jack should be living his life, and it really explores what it's like to be a queer person in today's standard. One of the main threads throughout the book is that Jack just wants to live his life. He doesn't feel like he should have to perform his sexuality in a certain way or try and act a certain way to break stereotypes. He just wants to be himself. Jack is such a deep, rich character, which I honestly did not expect. On the surface level, and the energy that he sends out to all his friends is he's very confident, very sure of himself. But the internal monologue that you get throughout the book is he's constantly questioning himself. I also really enjoyed the different relationships Jack has throughout the book. Him and his mother have a very unique relationship where they just kind of coexist in their house together. Also his friends. You see his friends want what's best for him, but they also have their own agenda and their own lives that they're living. It's not everything revolving around Jack. So that really creates realistic characters. You also see a lot of the authority figures in Jack's life, like the principal, who constantly victim blames Jack and does not take him seriously at all. The other really cool element in this book is, of course, the advice columns that Jack writes. You actually get to read the advice that he's giving to different students at his school and neighboring schools. All the questions boil down to, is this normal? Is it normal for me to be feeling this way? And I think that it's a really important thing to talk about in teen books, because I don't know about you guys, our sex education wasn't great. It was better than I know a lot of people's, but it still only touched very surface level things. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I will put a little bit of a content warning on this just because of the stalking element. It does get quite intense towards the end for sure. There is also a suggested rape in there, so definitely be wary of that. And there is a depiction of Jack's panic attacks. So go into that with that in mind, but overall I really like this book. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. Yeah, I got it right. This is a young adult fantasy, and it is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. So if you are at all familiar with that story, definitely recognize some elements in here. Our main character of this book is Annalee. She is one of 12 sisters. However, it is said that there is a curse on her family. Several of her sisters have met unfortunate accidents resulting in their death, and it leaves Annalee with thinking that there might be something more. When her youngest sister reports that she's been seeing ghosts of her past sisters, she thinks there may be something more to their deaths, and that's why they can never rest. Meanwhile, the rest of her sisters are sick of mourning. They have been mourning for almost all of their lives after their mother passed and then their other sisters have died. When they find a magical door that will take them wherever their hearts desire, they begin going to balls every single night and dancing the night away. But there's definitely more than meets the eye with these dances. So I tend to go into books trying to know very minimally about them. And normally it's really great because that means that outside opinions are informing me what I should think about this book. I wish I had done a little bit more research though, because this book is kind of scary. I did not realize that this would be a ghost story with some horror elements, and I am someone who gets scared very easily. Despite those spooky aspects, I did enjoy the book. I thought that the world itself was really cool. I personally love fairy tale retellings, especially when it follows like the Grimm brothers, like darker fairy tales. The world that it takes place in is super cool and so atmospheric. It takes place in this seaside manor house, and it definitely like adds to the overall vibe of the story. I also really enjoyed the mythology aspect of it. It takes place in this world where the gods and goddesses like walk amongst the humans. I do wish that it was explored even more because it ends up playing a lot bigger role than what you originally are led to believe. And I just would have liked some more information about the different gods and goddesses because you get like very minimal info. Annalee is a pretty typical heroine. She's kind, she's determined, she's smart. There is a little bit of the I'm not like other girls aspect to her, which is a thing, it's a choice. I did enjoy her relationship with her sister, specifically the one that was like a year older than her, and then the youngest one. The rest of them did kind of blend all together. You could have switched one for the other, and honestly, I wouldn't have really noticed. Unfortunately, the biggest downfall of the book is the love interest. I personally found him pretty one-dimensional. There wasn't a lot going on about him. Like, he was a mysterious stranger, but other than that, he honestly could have not been in the book at all, and it wouldn't have changed the plot all that much. It was an enjoyable book. I gave it a 3.5 stars, and I did really like the overall concept of it. However, I wasn't a big fan of the execution. Someone else might really enjoy this book. It just wasn't really for me. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is Pepperland by Delany. This is a young adult contemporary. It's very short. It's a very short, quick read. This follows our main character Star, whose mother recently passed away due to, I believe she had cancer, and she's dealing with the aftermath of this. This does take place in the 80s. One thing that Star and her mother shared was a love for the Beatles. They absolutely adored John Lennon. So when Star is going through some of her mother's old things and finds an unsent fan letter to John Lennon, she makes it a mission of hers to try and deliver it Because the book is so short, there's not much else to it. So I unfortunately was pretty disappointed with this book. I think part of it is because it is so short. It tried to touch on a lot of subjects in a really small compacted amount of time. It's less than 200 pages, and it tried to cover the fact that Star lost her mother. She doesn't really know how to deal with it. She doesn't really know how to talk about her feelings. There is also a love interest type thing going on, and that's a lot to fit in a 200-page book. It did mean that there wasn't a lot of downtime, so there was never points where I was like, wow, this is dragging, but it didn't leave room for a lot of development. I thought the overall concept was good, and I would have really liked to read maybe if it was like a 250-page book. It is 180 pages. It's too short a time to cover all of those subjects. There is also one scene that makes me rather uncomfortable in this book, and it depicts a almost rape, and the way that it was dealt with was not great. Star has a therapist that she's talking to, and she mentions it, and the therapist is like, how do you feel? And then never talks about it again. And for the rest of the book, I just had this really bad taste in my mouth with how that was handled. Really wanted to like this book, but I ended up giving it a 2 stars. If you are looking for something quick and easy to read, you can read this. I wouldn't really recommend it though. Alright, last but definitely not least, we have Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This is a young adult fantasy book. Do you ever just realize that you've been saying the character's name in your head is just I have no idea how to pronounce some of these characters' names, but we're gonna try. So this follows a dual perspective. Our first perspective is Nadia. She is a cleric, and she is able to hear the voices of the gods, and they grant her magic powers. She's been trained from a young age as a secret weapon in the Holy Wars against the Blood Mages. Our second perspective is Seraphine. The way some of these names are spelled, Seraphine. Sarah, it's this. That's his name. So, Seraphine. Seraphine's the prince. Since the age of 16, he has been at the warfront, and he is one of the most powerful blood mages that the royal family has seen in a long time. However, his father definitely resents him for that, and isn't pleased by the fact that he's being shown up by his son in the blood magic. After Nadia's monastery is destroyed, when Seraphine is looking for her, she goes in disguise to Terinvia, where she is going, I can't pronounce any of these names, y'all. She goes in disguise to the opposing kingdom to try and kill the king and bring back the old gods. She is forced to team up with a mysterious blood mage with a hidden dark past. Meanwhile, Seraphine is pretty sure his father is working with the blood mage cult, the Vultures, to try and kill him and take his power for himself. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I absolutely fell in love with it. So the magic system is really, really cool. So you have Nadia, who is able to draw powers from the gods, and she's able to ask them for certain spells, things like that. So you have that whole mythology aspect to it, as well as the magic. And then you have the blood mage magic, which is super neat. The world building itself is really cool. You do have some hard to pronounce names, as I've mentioned, with Nadia spelled with a Y, and I'm pretty sure it's Isaac spelled with a Z. The actual world itself that it takes place in is really well developed and it just draws you in. Also, really like the character dynamics. You have these dual perspectives, and they don't interact a ton, and yet they do. It's really hard to explain, but both Nadia and Seraphine, you see this whole development happen for both of them. You see them questioning a lot of the things that they know. You see them trying to figure out what is best for their kingdoms. There are quite a few plot twists, especially towards the end, that just had me going, oh my god, did not see that coming. But it's those types of plot twists that don't take you like off guard in a way that it doesn't make sense. It's just you like start hitting your head because you're like, how did I not see that? Overall, I just loved this book. It really just drew me in. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It had everything that I could want from a book. I've already ordered the second book. Hopefully it's on its way soon, because I fell in love with this world. And I did not expect that when I first read the description. I was like, okay, sounds interesting. Also, it has an enemies to lovers, which if you've watched my previous video, you know is one of my favorites. I highly recommend this, especially if you're someone who's like into D&D, because it has a lot of those like types of fantasy aspects to it. And I absolutely loved this book. So that is it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you've been reading some really good books while you have been inside, please let me know down below. I love getting book recommendations. I'm hoping to make some different types of videos pretty soon. I'm recording all of these and editing them on my phone. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but I'm really enjoying making these videos and talking about books. Please, if you want to see more videos like this or more bookish content, hit subscribe. And of course, please give this a thumbs up. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, bye!